Okay, so this next thing I'm going to talk about, this next topic is going to sound a little harsh, and I don't mean it in a terrible way. I do mean it in a caring but also understanding way. And so it does seem like I'm taking this side, and that's the thing about this. I try to be unbiased as much as possible. Um, but the evidence is not letting me be unbiased in my opinion. Right. So it's this is gonna be a morbid topic with morbid examples, and this is gonna be a more morbid conversation that I'm having, as it relates to Big Scar. So, with that being said, if you don't want a morbid topic, I really wouldn't recommend this episode. But let's talk Gucci the lies. Let's talk basically. Um, so let's talk. Before I um talk about it, I mean I don't mean to just frame. I don't mean to um assault anybody's character or assassinate anybody's character. I don't mean any of that. This is based on the facts I've seen on Instagram and some like receipts that I've seen. I use the term receipts lightly, but because not everything's in the public domain, so I'm making my assumption, and this is not stated in fact. This is not law. This is a theory of mine, right? So let's talk. Okay, so Gucci Mane and Big Scar. Big Scar was um dealing with something that I think they said it was, if I remember correctly, I think it might have been, was it drugs? I cannot remember what Big Scar's passing was. So give me a minute because I think Big Scar. Don't remember what he passed from, and so I do feel like they said it was an overdose, but I just want to verify. Was it a shooting? I just want to verify that it was. Okay, so it is confirmed that he died. Apparently, he died over drug overdose, which drug overdose has been the lead cause of a lot of things in the beginning of 2023. We lost Gangster Boo, but I'm not here to talk about Gangsta Boo real quick. I'll make a whole episode about drug overdose, and that'll be a deep conversation. But anyway, um, so from the family standpoint, that they thought Gucci was gonna pay for everything, and so that entail was $60,000. That's the number they're putting out there. They're putting $60,000. And I say this is morbid because I've put people to rest in peace, and I think the budget was what 4,000. I think 4 or 5,000, and I might have been lucky with connections and stuff. But so the average cost of a funeral, depending on where you look, it says from 3,500 to 4,000. Coffin prices, of course, will vary based on the coffins and the of of how you want the flowers and stuff like that. So from the family standpoint, they said that it took 60,000 to put him in the ground, and so that's fine. She says that the sister, I think the sister said from 20,000, only pay for the flowers and the was it the I don't mean to sound morbid, but is it the brochures? I believe that's what she said. It went to flowers and some other expense. That's only the only thing it covered. Um, it's a weird thing. So allegedly, that's the idea of. They thought they were getting 60,000 to cover the whole funeral. So they probably did go out on some choices that were, because if you there's some celebrities that when they pay it, they pay the full cost. Now Gucci said he was gonna pay towards it. He didn't say he was gonna pay the whole thing, so I get that. It's a weird thing, and granted, I don't want to pocket. I don't want to pocket watch. And when I say pocket watch, I mean watch how much money is going in somebody's pocket and all of this. So 60,000 might be what the funeral home price fully was. We're not shown. I don't see any receipts on the actual funeral cost itself to put Big Scar into the ground. Rest in peace, Big Scar. But there aren't many claims that I could find that show 60,000. Anyway, so to that claim of they 60,000, which we can argue the price if it is 60,000. If putting away somebody is 60,000, we can talk about that later. So I saw 2 payments. I've heard different prices float around, so we'll talk. So basically, I've heard Gucci paid 10,000, and then the label paid 10,000, for to bury Big Scar. So, and I think I have a problem with them saying that 10,000 isn't anything, because it's very hard, and I'm not saying that death is determined or known, but like there are situations where a lot of people don't have $10,000 to put somebody away if it costs $10,000 to put somebody away. Now I won't lie, Big Scar was growing to fame, but it's very hard for me to say that 10,000 isn't anything, and that's coming from somebody that had 10,000. That's tried to get 10,000. That's a perspective that I have. That's a general perspective that I have on life. Like 10,000 is not the easiest. 10,000 isn't the best. 10,000. There are things about it that you go, well, what necessarily, and people will go, well, people make $29,000 a year. Rappers don't have that luxury because advances and stuff floats around. So I get that. But 10,000, if they're willing to give you 10,000, it's freely. And I say subjectively 10,000 because the father did do an Instagram live where he said Gucci paid 18 and the label paid the other 10. So that brings me to 28,000. If it's 28,000, then the only thing left off the top of my head is what, 32,000? Generally, because that's what 18 and 10 is 28,000. So roughly 32,000 is left, basically, to put away his son. And so the father even said that he paid the rest. So it's very hard for me to say, what's conclusive evidence that Gucci isn't wrong. Gucci did pay towards Big Scar's the Big Scar's funeral, and I'm grateful that Gucci did that, because not a lot of labels will do it, or label heads will do that. So I'm thankful for that aspect of it. But I don't know. I don't want to pocket watch, but as I said, I don't want to pocket watch, but I think $60,000 to put somebody away just seems like a lot. It seems on the high end of things. Like if you were to get a all wood casket, or a certain kind of like wood, a lot of flowers. Now she said flowers was part of that 20,000, which, that's weird. So now this is where I'm getting the evidence of these receipts. The receipts are one-sided. They are from Gucci's wife, and Gucci wife's showed the ticket for 20,000 paid directly to the funeral home, and they have the receipt that say that it was approved and processed, and that. So in that regard, I get that. So this is the next thing we have to talk about. We have to talk about the chains, that people wear. For example, I will do. I'll give a greater example. The YMCMB chain and the chain that Rockefeller gives out to new artists. I'm pretty sure most of those chains are rented by the record label or by a jeweler, and then the artist pays on it and pays on it and pays on it. But now that Big Scar is dead, they're like, well, we're gonna take our chain back, and contractually, they probably have the right. If Big Scar is the only one that signed that document, they have the right to take their chain back. But there's no proof that Big Scar bought the chain right out. There's no proof that he and I say that because evidence is without evidence it's just blatant theory, and blatant theory is not the best to convict. Like, I need reasonable doubt, and so I'm going to assume the reason that they want that chain back is because he was renting the chain at the time, but he never officially finished that last payment. Now we can assume that depending on how much gold it is, if it's real gold, if it's how many diamonds, how many crystals, we get into the equate money value of it. And let's say he was paying X amount of dollars for it. They're like, well, Big Scar's the only one that signed that contract, so we're just gonna assume that no one else is gonna pay for it, and we're gonna take our property back. And the record label or the jeweler has the right to do so. Because then it becomes a liability. Because jewelry in and of itself is, you can argue, it's a liability, but it becomes a liability because who's gonna pay for it? The label's paying. If the label still decide to pay for it, who was gonna pay for it? That just because it was probably coming out of his advances, and that's another conversation in itself. But it's weird. So my ending thoughts on this is, I kind of, as I said, this makes me sound extremely biased, but I will say this, and I grant maybe it's because I've never had like this mentality, but it's only because it seems a tad bit entitled. I think because Big Scar was big, yeah, Big Scar was coming up. That's not debatable. He was. However, we have to talk about this $20,000 or $28,000 that was paid to the funeral home directly and not to the family, right? Because I assume it wasn't paid directly to the family, because why would we pay it directly to the family and they not put all that money towards his funeral and use it towards something else? I get that concept of it, and I get that concept of, well, it's a family matter. The family should be able to pick in how they want to bury him, and I get that too. And then I get, oh, well, we should pay directly to the funeral home so that it contributes directly to Big Scar and not directly to the family. I get that too. But it becomes this idea to me that 28,000 or 20,000. Now, I don't know the exact number because I've heard two numbers split around 20,000, 18,000. I've heard 10,000 is split, but the label paid 10. So look, truthfully, I don't know the exact numbers because the exact numbers have not come out. The receipt says 10. But the father said that somebody paid 18 and somebody paid 10, right? Like, so it becomes of who broke down and who breaks down what and all of that, right? But I think there's this thing, and it's probably because of the way I am, but it's the fact that it's $20,000, right? 20,000 is 10, anything, practically anything over $50 to me, I think it is something that if you give it in the aspect of a certain thing, right? Like no one's willingly giving $10,000 away just freely. Rappers might. I don't know. I'm not friends or associates with rappers, so I don't know how that works, right? But roughly $10,000 isn't just something that somebody just gives away and expects no return, right? So $10,000. So paying rest in peace, Big Scar, no disrespect to Big Scar, no disrespect to his family, no respect to Gucci, but $10,000 isn't just something somebody just gives away, and and to me that seems entitled if you expected Gucci to pay you directly, but that's because that's not guaranteed to go to Big Scar's funeral. That could go anywhere. It's $60,000. It's $20,000. It's $20,000. Can you imagine what? People could make whole new lives with $20,000. Truth be told, that's probably taxable, probably untaxable. We could argue that Gucci did to the funeral home, so it's a tax write-off. We could argue a lot of things. We could argue that's why he didn't give it to the family. We could argue this, and we could argue that you can't give over a certain amount of money. We could argue all of this, right? But I come down to this simple fact, is that 10,000 isn't something that people just give away. And I also come to the fact that it sounds a bit entitled, I think, to an extent, to thinking that you can do that. So I hate to say it, but it does sound like it sounds more like I side with Gucci just because there's more evidence on Gucci's side. And now if there was more evidence on Gucci's side, I could probably talk about another thing. If I'm not talking on that family aspect of Big Scar because they might be close and they might not be. But so I have to take that into account. But I'm not taking that into account on my like this me finally talking about it. I'm not taking that into account. So overall, I think Gucci covered his promise. So I can't be mad at Gucci. I can't be mad at Gucci man because he did pay towards Big Scar's death. So it's a weird. It's definitely weird. This overdose on drugs topic is something that is close to my heart. But that's for another episode. That's for another episode where I can get into the effects of drug abuse and stuff like that. That's for another topic. But overall, I think Gucci covered his bases. So I don't know. What's your opinion?